My name is Megan Mitchell, and I am the Director of Pathways at EdSystems Center. And as stated before, we are really excited and grateful for you all to join us here in this presentation. The title of this presentation is called Dual Credit One on 101. And so today, here are all the things that we will be learning. So we're going to talk about the Illinois policy landscape, program models and pathways. We're going to give you some strategies for implementation and some considerations. And then we're going to round out our presentation here with some data and accountability concepts for you all to review. Again, the purpose of our presentation is to really get you all in the mud, right? Like we want to make sure that you all are getting high level information about what's happening in our state in terms of current policy and state initiatives centered around dual credit Illinois. We're going to give you all an understanding of dual credit and early college program models in our state. And then we're going to talk about some implementation strategies for launching and also expanding dual credit offerings. And then we're going to, again, as stated, round out our presentation by talking about some tracking outcomes, right, for program effectiveness and continuous improvement. So some of you are very familiar with who we are at EdSystems. So Education Systems Center, or EdSystems for short, is a policy and program implementation center based within Northern Illinois University. We were founded in 2012, and we work to create clear, unambiguous paths to college and career opportunities for young people. Our areas of practice center on ensuring learners are ready for and successful in college and workforce. We are interested in comprehensive pathways development that includes mapping program of study from secondary to post-secondary, plus work-based learning, transitional instruction, early college opportunities. That's a lot of things that we do within our organization. We look for innovative practices such as competency-based approaches that help scale. We care about evaluations that inform continuous improvement and build partnerships and networks that drive change. In order to create meaningful and lasting change, our approach is guided by 4 principles. We prioritize equity, particularly those students who are furthest from opportunity. We align across secondary and post-secondary education and workforce systems to ensure seamless transitions for learners. We ground our work in data and research, including stakeholder engagement. Finally, and I think most importantly, we take a bi-directional approach at both state and the local levels to ensure that policies are grounded in practice and practice are informed by evidence, that impact is measured and sustained across Illinois and beyond. The EdSystems portfolio is organized into 3 interconnected pillars. First, we support the development and implementation of policies that remove barriers and increase college and career access and success. Concurrently, we work with communities to design, pilot, and scale innovative practices that improve student experiences and outcomes. Additionally, we generate and analyze critical data while leading networks and building field capacity to ensure that research translates into coordinated action and lasting change. Across these projects, our teams are helping move the field forward by developing research, by developing resources, launching programs, and building data infrastructures, tools, and supporting capacity for educators and employers. We offer technical assistance to policymakers at all levels, state agencies. We lead communities of practice and networks. As you can see, there's a lot of good work that's happening at EdSystems, and there's more to see. If you're interested in learning more about who we are and what we do, please feel free to visit our website at edsystemsniu.org. as we're getting to know each other in this space, we'd love to get to know you all. So if you could take a moment to drop in the chat your name, your organization, your role, and then also your childhood job. And so I will motto here. As stated before, my name is Megan Mitchell, and I am the Director of Pathways at EdSystems Center. I'm a little embarrassed to tell y'all my childhood job, but I'm going to share it anyway because it's a safe space. Way back in the day, as a young person, I knew that I was going to be a background dancer for Destiny's Child. Unfortunately, I was not invited to go on the Cowboy Carter tour, so I am happily here at EdSystems doing great work here. So if you all could please share more about who you are so that we can make some connections, that would be extremely helpful as well. As we get ready for this presentation, I'm really excited to turn it over to my dear colleague, Emily Ruska. She's going to really dive in deep with you all and talk a lot about Illinois dual credit policy in our state.
Thanks, Megan. So I'm here to just lay a little bit of the groundwork regarding the policy landscape in Illinois and some of the priorities in the state around dual credit. Again, my name is Emily Ruska. I'm our Director of Policy at EdSystems. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a young kid. I think it's out of this world that I get to work in education policy at EdSystems. So it still works. Just to lay a little bit of the groundwork here, one of the things that's most important for us at EdSystems and just generally in the field to keep in mind is, what are the benefits to students and institutions of dual credit, right? And I'm not going to read through each of these bullet points, but these come from the Dual Credit Quality Act. They come from our dual credit reporting that happens every year out of the Illinois Community College Board. But really, what dual credit enables us to do as a system is provide really robust and important opportunities to young people to access early college, to improve their opportunities to transition into college from high school, to help them save money by speeding their time to degree completion at the post-secondary level, and to really improve advancement rates once they're in post-secondary as well. And so when we think about it for post-secondary institutions, there's also a lot of benefits, right? This helps provide some community level alignment and overlap that can really foster clear and coherent pipelines of students from high school into community colleges in their community. It can improve student outcomes. I'll show some of those improved outcomes in a slide here in just a second. And also it can be a real early pipeline strategy for recruiting and engaging future students. As we face enrollment cliffs and various challenges in post-secondary enrollment, dual credit can really serve as that door opener for a lot of students to ideate on what their future could look like. So the data on this slide here comes from the Illinois Community College College Board dual credit report from this year. This shows community college graduation rates and advancement rates of students who either previously had dual credit in their transcript or didn't have dual credit in their transcript. And so as you can see here, the students who had some experience with dual credit on their transcript prior to entering community colleges in Illinois have higher graduation rates and advancement rates. And this is all within the Illinois community college system and dual credit coming from Illinois community colleges. So this is some evidence of the benefit of dual credit, not only to students who are succeeding at the post-secondary level when they have dual credit, but also for institutions. These rates look positive for institutions. But getting back to the general policy landscape around dual credit, the main policy we have in the state, the main legislation we have in the state pertaining to dual credit is the Dual Credit Quality Act, the DCQA, you might see abbreviated. So the Dual Credit Quality Act has been amended several times over the years, and I'll talk a little bit about what this year's amendment, this current amendment, this newest amendment entails. But broadly what it does is it says what needs to be done in order to establish dual credit partnerships and create dual credit coursework to offer to students across the state of Illinois. So it outlines what secondary and post-secondary partners need to do to establish those programs. It sets expectations around access to those programs, including for students with disabilities. It includes expectations around how you communicate about those opportunities with students, faculty, educators, families, et cetera. And the Dual Credit Quality Act also created the Model Partnership Agreement, which I'll speak a little bit more to in a minute, that centers students and helps guide local leaders as they are establishing their local partnerships. So the sands are shifting somewhat right now in terms of the real hard and fast rules around dual credit, because in this previous legislative session, an amendment to the Dual Credit Quality Act was passed that was signed into law in June, and our state agencies are very quickly working to create draft rules that will be put out for public comment here soon. But this amendment makes some changes to the fundamental components in the Dual Credit Quality Act. Firstly, it really emphasizes the importance of local partnerships, and that shows up in various places in the amendment around out-of-state partnerships or even just non-local partnerships in the state of Illinois. It establishes some firm timelines and processes for commencing partnership development in the state. And it creates an appeals process for secondary districts to appeal decisions by their local community college partner to decline a course. And it creates, very importantly, it creates a dual credit committee that is going to be representative of secondary and post-secondary leaders to meet at least annually to address issues around accessibility, quality, and alignment of dual credit programs, really focus on meeting the needs of students. So there's a lot more policy to come out of this, right? So the dual credit committee will be promulgating guidance and resources. The Illinois Community College Board will be establishing rules that really very clearly outline what these processes mean, and it will all be laid out in the coming months here, but that's where some of the sands are shifting here. So in the Dual Credit Quality Act, like I mentioned earlier, the Model Partnership Agreement is one of those cornerstone pieces that was established by the Dual Credit Quality Act. It basically it was created to address the fact that, partnership can be challenging and folks needed a lot of guidance and resources. So what it includes is a lot of exhibits. It's designed in the format of exhibits and guidance. And those exhibits walk you through the process of establishing partnerships, whether that's considering costs, whether that's considering different delivery methods, whether that's in-person, virtual, delivered at a high school, delivered at a college, etc. And it also establishes the state's standard around what strategic dual credit is and how we prioritize courses. And this will come up later as Laura and Megan are talking about different programs and models and how to integrate dual credit into various programs. But really what the state is saying in the Model Partnership Agreement, which was created in partnership with secondary, post-secondary state agency leaders, what it outlines is that priority courses include those core academic courses that are aligned with IAI General Ed core curriculum, as well as priority career pathway courses, which means career-focused instruction that aligns with college and career pathways as defined in the Post-Secondary and Workforce Readiness Act. So the Dual Credit Quality Act is the primary legislation governing dual credit in the state. That's where you find all the nuts and bolts of what's required to establish dual credit programs and how to handle them. But it shows up in other state policy frameworks. So we can go to the next slide, which is my final slide here. Dual credit shows up in multiple places in state policy, right? It's a critical college and career readiness strategy, a college and career preparation strategy, and therefore it shows up in various places. So I'll just briefly describe what this is. So robust and strategic dual credit is emphasized across all of the policy frameworks here and probably more, right? So in our Every Student Succeeds Act College and Career Readiness Indicator, which is part of our school quality framework for secondary, it includes emphasis on strategic dual credit, both core academic as well as career-focused instruction. The Post-Secondary and Workforce Readiness Act, which you'll hear more about later, includes a real emphasis on early college credit, both in the post-secondary and career expectations framework, as well as college and career pathway endorsements. High school districts, or all districts, are required to have an automatic acceleration policy that includes dual credit as one of those potential accelerators for students. And our state's career and technical education programming really emphasizes strategic dual credit to be integrated into those programs as well. So you'll see that in addition to accountability, dual credit shows up in how our state thinks about and wants to prepare students for college, career, and life. So that's the broad policy that's a broad policy setting for dual credit in the state. Please feel free to drop questions in the chat. I'll address them there. And there's more at our site as well. And I'm handing off to Laura to talk about different dual credit policies or models and pathways.
Hi, everybody. As Emily mentioned, my name is Laura Monagudo. I am a Pathways Manager with EdSystems, and sort of my goal while I'm with you all today is to sort of just set the stage about what are some models when it comes to early college credit and pathways, and sort of lead the way into sort of the practical application of some of the policy pieces Emily already talked about. But the first place I wanted to start is just kind of breaking it down at the most basic level. So actually a little bit of context for this slide and some of the next slides. One of my first projects that I worked on at EdSystems was developing the second version of the Illinois Career Pathways Dictionary. If any of you are curious and you haven't seen it before, literally just pathwaysdictionary.org. But defining all of these different terms to make sure folks in Illinois are all on the same page when we're talking about career pathways and early college. When we did that, we actually did a survey of a bunch of folks to see like where they felt the most clarification was necessary. And these terms around early college credit were one of the things that came up the most frequently. So I guess before I get into sort of these examples, I'll just sort of clarify that when we're talking about early college credit, we're using that as kind of a more wide-ranging term to cover all of these different ways in which high school students can earn college credit or post-secondary credit while they're still in high school. The one that we've been talking about the most, and obviously you can tell by the title, sort of the main highlight of the presentation that we're doing for you all today is dual credit. Dual credit is specific to when high school students are taking college level courses and earning both high school and college credit simultaneously. This is typically done through a partnership between the high school and a community college or post-secondary institution. And this is kind of all under the policy specifics Emily already sort of laid out from the Illinois Dual Credit Quality Act. Some of the other more like very popular versions of early college credit that you'll see, especially depending on where you are in the state, advanced placement or AP courses, and international baccalaureate. So those are sort of three different programs, more specified curriculums, and those do offer college credit, but both of those actually kind of are dependent on how students perform on certain high stakes tests that they take at the conclusion of those courses. And then articulated credit is where there's agreement between a high school course and like a credit with a partner in college. Often this is kind of the most commonly seen like in regards to certain career and technical education courses. They might require a minimum grade achievement, but that's sort of like more specific instances, and it really depends on the institutions that are partnering together for those. So those are kind of the main terms and types of the different types of early college credit. And they're pretty important to help us understand sort of this next piece, which is what we mean when we talk about college and career pathways. Because this is another space where there are a lot of terms that you might hear get thrown around that are different but similar sounding and can definitely get a little confusing. So kind of the way that I've laid it out and the way that I am going to walk through it all is sort of starting with the most broad and then getting down to some more specific. So when we're talking about a career pathway, and I guess actually before I get to the definitions, also again, these definitions are pulled directly from that Illinois Career Pathways Dictionary. A couple of these are just snippets because the definitions in the dictionary are much longer than I could fit on one slide. So if you want to really get into the nitty gritty of the differences between these things and the requirements of these definitions, I saw Emily already threw the link to the dictionary in the chat. So you can take a closer look. But starting first just with a career pathway. So this is going to be sort of the most broad of these terms, and this is just referring to a combination of, high quality education, training, work-based learning courses, things like that, across post-secondary, adult education, secondary, workforce training, kind of centered around a particular career area across the different career and education systems. So sometimes we might talk about a student being in an IT pathway or a healthcare pathway. Within a pathway, you will find a program of study, which is a little bit more specific than just the broader sense of like a specific career pathway. A program of study is actually going to refer to a coordinated and non-duplicative sequence of courses and technical content that kind of stretches and spans like that transition piece from like within secondary and post-secondary. So that aspect of program of study is going to require quite a bit of partnership and collaboration. It's going to include some high school courses, some CTE courses, some dual credit or early college courses. Now, with this particular definition, it's important to note that a program of study under the definition that comes out of Perkins 5 legislation has 5 or 6 key like components that it has to like requirements that it has to meet to be considered a program of study. Like I said, I could not fit that all on this slide. But if you want to know exactly what those are, they're listed on the dictionary. They're things like multiple entry and exit points, and a few other sort of similar components. Then we have career and technical education, which, colloquially you'll probably hear people refer to more as CTE. These are specific courses that are focused on preparing individuals for high skill, high wage, in-demand employment. So a lot of times these are courses that are offered either within a high school or a career center that are sort of more traditionally associated with like what people would talk about as the trades. They're not necessarily specific to sort of paths that are not like that are straight into the workforce versus like 4-year. It's not really structured like that. That's kind of the way people have thought about it in the past. That is not necessarily how it works anymore. But college or career and technical education could be things like taking a welding course. It could be courses to get a nursing assistant certification. So there's all these different kind of more career specific courses that would fit under career and technical education. And then the last one here is the college and career pathway endorsement. So this is a more specific endorsement that is sort of set up in some of the policy and legislation Emily talked about, more specifically in the Post-Secondary Workforce Readiness Act. It is an endorsement that students who complete will receive marked on their high school diploma or transcript. And it demonstrates that those students have earned a certain level of career readiness through early college credit courses, career-focused courses, some work-based learning, and a handful of other things. So that's kind of like a more specific, more structured endorsement that students will earn within a particular career pathway. That's one that the state has really been kind of pushing the last several years. So that's probably one of these you've heard quite a bit about. But I would say it's kind of key to note that like these career pathways and programs of studies, the CCP is kind of like one example of that versus like the whole definition. The key differentiators here of like why we are talking so much about dual credit versus all of these other types of early college credit are a few kind of key points. One is just the guaranteed credit acceptance, if you will call it that. As I mentioned before, with things like AP or IB, they're pretty dependent on students doing, a certain score or certain level of proficiency on a more high stakes test or exam that they take at the end of the course. Dual credit courses are offered through partnership with post-secondary institutions. So those are just college courses that students will get college credit for through agreements like the Illinois Articulation Initiative, which kind of leading down below just increases, ease of transferability, whether students are starting at the community college where they received the dual credit or they're going straight to a 4-year college. Transferring those credits and getting like more specific or sometimes even major specific course credits is a lot easier when they're doing these courses through dual credit partnerships versus something like AP or IB. And then kind of a key part here too, and I feel like we've already kind of mentioned these different things quite a bit, so it hopefully is clear that dual credit especially also really fosters collaboration between the different parts of our, education to college to career systems, so that just inherently to offer dual credit, high schools have to partner with their community college, which ensures better alignment with curriculums, better alignment with, program requirements at the post-secondary level. So it just is a little bit more seamlessly kind of going to fit into some of those specific like course sequences or pathways or major requirements. And then the last one here was just about sort of increase of access. So when students are dual credit students, a lot of times they are considered like a student at whatever institution the dual credit course is through. So if they are taking a dual credit course in partnership with their community college, so for example, I live near College of DuPage. If I was a high schooler and I was taking a dual credit course through College of DuPage, I would technically be considered a College of DuPage student. And that would give me access to all of the resources, advising, and things like that available to the students at that community college. So that's another kind of like added benefit of dual credit that you don't necessarily get with some of those other models. On the next slide, we have a little bit of an introduction to, again, sort of one of the state models that incorporates all of this and sort of helps kind of lead to that next piece of implementation, which is the State of Illinois Model Program of Study Guides. So these are guides that were developed in collaboration with the Illinois Community College Board to help provide guidance and exemplars to help local programs sort of build out their pathways and identify priority dual credit courses, as well as priority careers in the different fields. So they define competencies that should be sequenced across programs. They identify entry points for work-based learning, and they also kind of lay out model course sequences, which I think Megan will get more in detail on later, so I won't go too much in detail there other than to just kind of show you a quick snapshot on my next slide of what these look like. But this is kind of that part of a program of study where you're starting to build out those course sequences spanning sort of that transition and alignment with some aspects of still the secondary coursework, some aspects of CTE, and some aspects of that early college. So this is a snapshot. It might be hard to see, but we will have all the links in the presentation that gets shared with you, and I'm sure someone will probably throw in the chat at some point. But this is just a quick snapshot of what those guides look like. So if you can see, kind of moving from right to left, is sort of how we come up with these. We back map them. So we start with that labor market information, which is that chart, you know, with all of the wages and things like that, and look to see, you know, what careers have the best potential for a living wage. So not just what careers have, you know, open need, but also like, is it going to pay students enough to live? That's important. And annual wage openings, those types of things. And we start there to help us identify priority careers. And then we sort of back map from there. So we'll start looking at what education, certificate, credential is required to do this job. And then map back all the way through to coming up with that model course sequence for the program of study, where we'll say these are the best dual credit courses that will prepare students for the widest range of programs. So for example, like if this is IT, I'm not going to go with IT because I don't know IT that well. But say it was a healthcare pathway, right? So identifying the courses that are going to open the most doors for the most students could mean an anatomy course, because that is a course that's going to be required in many different healthcare programs. So it's kind of the goal of these is to help folks identify those courses to make implementation and determining which dual credit courses to offer a little bit easier. So this slide is kind of my last piece before I hand it off to get more into strategies and like actually kind of getting going on the ground with dual credit implementation, which is kind of, again, like a few key points about why there is an advantage to prioritizing dual credit over other types of early college credit. And one is just policy compliance. I mentioned the state has been doing a lot of push around college and career pathway endorsement and sort of other ways that they really want to make sure Illinois students are ready for college and career. And dual credit, because it's part of, you know, the state system already, and aligning those systems is gonna meet those requirements. Also, you know, Emily already showed you some data, but prioritizing dual credit does really correlate with better student trajectories. So there are some pretty clear data-driven results to offering more dual credit. Access and expansion, making college more affordable, for students is beneficial for all of students. A lot of times it's easy to overlook how participating in a dual credit course can give a student a little bit of a smoother entrance point into actually enrolling after graduation at their community college or at whatever post-secondary institution. So that's definitely a big benefit. And then I won't stress enough, because I think it's one of the biggest benefits of dual credit, is just strengthening those partnerships between the high schools and colleges. I feel like many folk, probably not a lot of folks, would disagree that like it's beneficial to have those folks working together to get students on the best path. So that's sort of all of the reasons why, as we proceed with this presentation, like, we encourage you all to think about ways that you can invest in expanding dual credit, whether that's through partnerships, course offerings, how you work with students. Dual credit is just kind of the model and like what we're looking to in Illinois in terms of early college credit and pathways. And with that, I will hand it to Megan. Like I said, she's going to get a little bit more into the actual implementation and strategy.
So I just want to thank you so much, Emily and Laura, for providing the information that you just did. Emily, thank you for providing the high level and even some detailed information within that about some of the policy landscape within Illinois, because all of that really is the foundation for the work that we do and how we do it internally and with our partners. And Laura, thank you so much for providing all of those definitions. I think that's like so critical for us to understand how to differentiate pathways from program of studies, from CCPE, because I know we can get into the alphabet soup with all of the various acronyms and meanings of things. But I do definitely appreciate the information you provided in terms of like the strategicness of dual credit courses and what that means and how it's beneficial for students, and how you also alleviated the importance of partnership across community colleges at the local level with your high school districts, and also with the folks within your area in terms of like industry and workforce partners. All of those partnerships are valued and are needed as we're thinking about implementation. So for this part of the presentation, I'm going to lean into some strategies and also some considerations as you all are expanding, building, launching, or even scaling your dual credit programs. So one thing that is just definitely important to really think about or to consider is like course selection and then pathway mapping, right? And so you've heard Emily talk about the importance of those core academic courses and then also those career focused courses too. And so one thing that's important to note is that high quality pathways use data driven decisions, right, to align course offerings with not only student interest, but also that labor market information. So Laura showed you a snippet of what we do or what's happening within our model program of study guides, where we start with the labor market information. So that means that we're using that data to really help us think about those occupations and careers that are not just going to lead to a living wage, but are going to be around for the next couple of years, that the community college have academic programs to support those particular careers as well. We think about and we talk about the importance of co-designing these pieces, right? Partnership is such a critical piece, right? And all of those pieces are so important, to include high school, to include industry, and also college folks there. And at every level is important to include and receive stakeholder feedback about the academic piece, how we are supporting students as they're transitioning into or even taking the courses as well, and also industry to talk about what's needed within the workforce, within those particular careers and occupations. And then, of course, we want to ensure that those courses build towards certificates, degree programs, or transferable goals. I know a term that we often hear is no random acts of dual credit, right? So we want to eliminate those random dual credit courses that don't necessarily accelerate a student. While they may be of a student interest, we have to think about those courses that are accelerating our students to with a particular career path, and that's going to lead to credential or transfer goals or early employment. Another strategy to consider when building out pathway maps or program of study is to really consider front loading those CTE courses. Now, I'll say the sweet spot is when a CTE course and a dual credit course overlap with a course that's designated as the Illinois Articulation Initiative. Those are the type of courses that we want to implement within our program because, again, they have lots of portability for students. A student can take that same course from high school to and through community college, and sometimes to and through a four-year institution as well. So again, we want to make sure that we're really thinking about the strategicness of our courses and making sure that our pathways are of high quality. Another big point here is scheduling and transportation considerations. We know that high school schedules are very complex, right? Extremely complex for students. And there are sometimes lots of competing priorities at the high school level in terms of fitting in those courses within our student schedule. So we want to make sure that we're thinking about courses that are offered at the high school campus, at the college campus, and or online to really maximize access for our students. Again, we want to coordinate those students' schedules to make sure that we're minimizing conflicts and avoiding those transportation barriers. There are some examples where we see school districts combining resources or sharing buses and transporting students to or from various district or high schools within a district and or a career center and or a community college to really make sure that students can get access and that transportation is not a barrier. Another thing is that there are many technology pieces that allow for some flexible delivery models to expand participation. Again, online is one of those tools. There are also other types of technology to help with like the coordination of scheduling courses to minimize the barrier upon the capacity of our school district folks too. So we encourage you all to take advantage of all of those opportunities that are available to you all. And so we do want to talk about credentialing requirements for faculty and teachers because this is a big consideration when offering various dual credit courses or even pathways within our school districts. So one thing that is, important to note is that community colleges really maintain the credential verification process for dual credit courses. And so instructors submit their transcripts and verification through their hiring institution, which will evaluate the qualifications and then submit the required documentation over to our state agency for, endorsements. High school teachers are required to have the appropriate credential and endorsement, of course, to teach those college level dual credit courses. And so those requirements are a qualified master's degree within the discipline being taught or any master's degree plus at least 18 graduate hours within the content area. And so these are the credentials that are required to engage in dual credit courses for our teachers and our faculty. The other piece that I want to lean into here is some advising supports for student success. And so it's important to get those courses on the books to provide access for our students so that they're able to take those courses, but it's also equally important to think about how we are supporting them while they are taking those courses too. We know that dual credit courses, the academic rigor may be very different from a high school course per se. And so we want to make sure that we provide students advising in terms of helping them selecting the appropriate dual credit course for them, right? Like, again, we want to eliminate those random acts of dual credit and make sure we're helping them select courses that are strategic for them. In addition to that, providing those academic supports such as tutoring, mentoring, or even those college readiness workshops that really give students an understanding about what it means to take a dual credit course. And then lastly, it's important to address equity by proactively supporting those students who are furthest from opportunity to really close those participation gaps as well. And so I wanted to show you all and talk through a case example of a successful dual credit partnership. I'm going to ask one of my colleagues if you could click on this link here, Lake County Regional Pathway Maps, and then drop that link in the chat. That would be extremely helpful. And so in that link, what you'll see are various pathways that were created. And so we chose this because College of Lake County, along with many of their feeder school districts within that particular region, came together to really create regional maps that include strategic dual credit courses. And so I want to talk through some of their success factors. And so I know Laura mentioned this, also Emily talked about the importance and the value of authentic partnerships, right? And how that includes, like we stated before, secondary, post-secondary, and workforce stakeholders. And so within this particular model, there was multi-level buy-in and participation from various folks within industry, at the high school level, various districts within that region, and also the post-secondary institution, which was the College of Lake County, all came together and really worked through that backward mapping process that Laura uplifted in the model program and study guides, when we started with the labor market information and input from industry folks and community organizations that really do the research and understand what's needed at the economy level, right? In terms of what's needed in workforce level within that entire region. And we're able to translate that information to folks on the ground, teaching students, to folks at the administration level within the community college, and also at the school district level too. And so collectively, we were able to align all pathways to labor market information that includes those courses that we talked about that accelerate students towards a credential, that provide equally those core academic courses and also those career focused courses as well. And so these maps include CTE courses, AP, general education, career focus. All of those maps have a plethora of those options within them. And so I know the snapshot that Laura saw was probably difficult on the eye. I don't know if this is much better at all, but we tried to blow it up a little bit for you just to kind of see what we mean when we say we backwards map from the labor market information, right? Using data to really help drive our decisions in terms of how we're selecting those particular programs to map to in terms of dual credit courses. So what you see here is particularly for health science. You'll see how the programs, which is the column to your far left, is broken down from guided transfer, pre-professional, nursing, and or other professions there. And then you'll see how, we kind of categorize the living wage potential, whether it's high, medium, or low. We give the actual number in terms of like the hourly wage. You see the growth of the role over 10 years, the annual job openings, like how many job openings are going to be available for this particular job in this region. And then you see the educational requirements that are listed there. And so we take this information here. I just want to just reiterate the importance of true partnership, because this was not done in silo. This was done in true collaboration with the folks within that particular region. And so you'll see in the document that was dropped in the chat, there are multiple maps for health science or health careers, but here we're showing nursing here, but the labor market correlates to the various maps that were created. And so here is a bigger piece of what Laura also described in terms of the model program and study guides too. This correlates with that. At the top, you'll see the career focus courses there, and then you'll see the various core academic courses or general education courses. And there are various options there. There are transitional instruction options there. There are AP courses there, and there are also dual credit courses, all sprinkled within these pathways so that students have various options. And then you'll also see CTE courses uplifted there as well. And so again, the importance of partnership is critical, because many conversations happen to help select these courses in terms of, were there teachers available who were credentialed to teach the courses that we're putting in the pathway? Are these courses door opener courses? Are they going to open the door to other opportunities within academics or even within the workforce for students, right? We think about those courses that have some portability, right? That students are able to take a course and transfer it from, or it's portable from high school to and through community college and beyond. So I'll let you all, peruse through all of the various pathways that were created within the Lake County region. And so as I round out my part and get ready to transfer it over to my colleague Dominique, I know that you all have received a lot of information about the policy landscape in Illinois, about the various dual credit options, and also special considerations when you're thinking about either expanding or launching a dual credit program. Now we're going to pivot here, and we're going to talk about accountability and also continuous improvement, and making sure that we all are assessing and using proper tools to think about how we can enhance our programs as a whole. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Dominique to introduce herself and lead us within this next section here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Megan. My name is Dominique Chantier. I'm a data analyst at EdSystems, and we're just going to close this presentation by going through some of the considerations you should make when working with dual credit data, as well as the ways to engage in continuous improvement processes using data. So this first slide, why use data? So this is a model generally showing effective data-driven decision-making and what it could look like in a district, a school, etc. We won't get into every level, but it's basically 3 different tiers. First, starting with foundation of conditions for data use, quality, capacity, and culture. And then with that, we're enabled to use different types of data-driven actions like policy, programs, practice, and placement. And finally, and most importantly, all of that together should be linked to improve student outcomes. And then running throughout all of that is, in order to create lasting impact on student achievement, data use must be sustained over time. It should take place systemically throughout all levels of an organization, and it should be student-centered. So moving on to the next slide, using data for accountability and impact. Through our work at EdSystems, we are focused on good data use. And a lot of that could be longitudinal data use. We want to make sure we're setting goals because data allows us to set ambitious but achievable goals. We want to focus on incremental improvement. So small improvements over time, those improvements can add up. And then always a focus on equity, ensuring that those furthest behind get the support that they need to catch up. And in dual credit, that keeps actors accountable and leads to student-centered impact. So when we talk about dual credit impact, we want to assess who benefits from dual credit opportunities, and look at some particular data points of interest, which could include dual credit participation, dual credit course outcomes, and then early college credit accumulation. Moving on to the next one. So here are some examples of how we look at dual credit data longitudinally using the Illinois report card data from ISB. At EdSystems, we use this data to perform trend analyses and link data longitudinally, i.e. the relationship between dual credit and high school graduation and high school graduation to post-secondary enrollment. I saw there was some great discussion in the chat about the relationship between these things. I'll get a little bit into that and how we might evaluate that in the next slide. Then on the left, here's an example of a chart that we created for our annual policy committee data deep dive. This was a part of the Illinois Education and Career Success Network that EdSystems heads. We have an annual review of the data in our policy committee. Dual credit is just one of many metrics that we look for when we talk about post-secondary attainment. But here we have a view of dual credit from school year 16 through 19 up to the most recent school year where data is available. And we're taking a look disaggregated by demographics. So seeing what is the difference in dual credit participation between these different demographics. Of course, this is just generally by the state. But if you were to access the interactive report card, you would be able to look for your school and your district. And just taking a look at that data is a great way to kind of get a pulse on what's going on in your school or district. And then on the right is a snapshot of a dashboard that we publish every year after the report card data is published. Again, part of our success network. And while this takes sort of a smaller look at particular districts and schools within our success network, it's still a great resource and tool to evaluate just the impact of dual credit and the landscape and how it's looking in your particular district. Again, I know there was some discussion about correlation versus causation and how we might link that to other data sources. That is something that's continually in conversation and does require some collaboration between different state agencies, et cetera. But just looking at the report card data, for example, is a great way to, on a smaller scale, kind of take a pulse and be accountable to yourself, but also to continuously be looking at that kind of data. So lastly, here's some considerations that you really want to be using when we're talking about thoughtful and responsible data use. This is a big one. Correlation, again, does not equal causation. We've seen a pretty strong relationship between dual credit participation and graduation rates, not only at the high school level, but also post-secondary. And as Jean Marie mentioned, thank you again for your questions. It can be hard to know if those students graduated because of dual credit in isolation, or if they're already college bound and they just so happen to be taking dual credit. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. We always want to frame it in terms of a relationship rather than one thing cost another thing. Although just looking at the data, there is a strong reason to believe that dual credit does contribute to those different things. Second, variables interact with each other. So an increase in college enrollment, for example, could lead to reductions in rates of college persistence and completion. And what that means is we might get more students enrolling in college enrollment, but we might not necessarily have students enrolling who are high achieving or have the supports necessary to succeed in post-secondary, even if we are getting them there. So we want to just, again, be keeping that in mind when we're looking at that relationship. And then lastly, isolating the impact of interventions can be challenging. That links back to that correlation does not equal causation. So for example, if your district increases dual credit participation at the same time it increases college counseling, et cetera, determining which one had the most impact can be difficult. So again, while we are using data to to track these outcomes, we also want to be looking at it through a critical lens to make sure that we are representing it correctly and really using it thoughtfully. And I believe that's all for me. So I'll hand it back to me again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dominique. I really appreciate you uplifting some of those best practices and examples in terms of how folks can look and review some dual credit data at the state level and also use it for their district as well. And so we wanted to leave you all with some resources here. I know we've talked about some of these, and these are linked in the presentation itself. Please know that this presentation will be emailed out to all those who've registered and who attended this session. Please feel free to share it with folks internally or your partners or people who you work with. And please know that us here at EdSystems, we are excited and are happy to partner with you all, be a thought partner to think through what dual credit 101 can mean for your district, for your institution, and also of your industry folks for you all as well.